I do have my audio. Good afternoon, my friends. It is getting dark here. And yes, look, I actually have a traveler signal. It's true. Yes, this is entirely what I'm working on right now. Definitely. Uh, yeah. Okay. Um, so, yeah, that's not what I'm working on. How has this week been? Um, well, there's been a lot of Delta developments, and I have worked a tiny little bit on Traveller, honestly. And I've talked to John, and he's convinced me to let him do more stretch goal conversions. So I think we can bang out a couple of quick stretch goals in the coming days, coming week, really. Um, but yeah, it is Friday. Tonight we're having our office Christmas party. So straight after this, I'm heading home, getting changed, coming back, and we're going to partay. I was going to say something about announcing my retirement so that I can enjoy the party. But yeah, I'm here. And yeah, nice to see you guys. Hey, Fabian's here for the first time. Welcome. And I see Solar Spirit, Pulsified Gaming, which you've got a live stream too that you had up recently. Brian, Tamsin, Thomas, welcome. Anders, nice to see some people. Before the stream, I was just thinking and reflecting about how thankful I am. Kind of like, we'll probably have one last pre-Christmas stream, and then I don't know if we'll have anything else for the rest of the year. As the final week of the year tends to be quite busy for my family. My wife has quite an intensive time at work, and I have to pick up the slack at home. OSHA nightmares, apparently, these things. But what if it's just a very slow fan and it's exhaust? It's not drawing in anything. It's just really to make pretty lights. That's all it's designed to do. We have the new version, and I made this because John actually said, "Hey Ben, I mean, this is better than what it was, but this is like not up to Second Dynasty standards. Look how camfered it is." And he's not wrong. So the new version, much higher detail, pipes and other geometry. I've had to rebuild yet again the exterior. So we're going to do some exports. We potentially are going to work on the wing, making it printable. That's what I've been doing for the Traveller stuff, although honestly, and this is again one of those creative things where it's like my inspiration has been the Delta. I go open up the Traveller scene and I'm just like, ugh. Which doesn't mean I don't need to get it done. It's just I've let myself procrastinate. That being said, the Delta is a hell of a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. And we have a plan for that. But before we get into all of that whinging, just wanted to take the time to reflect on how thankful I am for you guys that have supported Second Dynasty throughout 2023, but also to my team. Lisa Lot's always in the background. She does stuff like maintain my Minifactory site, and she does the bookkeeping, which means I can spend more time being creative. Then we have Alban, who's been noticeably absent the last 3 or so months, really more closer to 6 months, because he's been working on this feature film production, a children's film, doing the post-production. Lisa Lot's not here at the moment, John. And then, of course, John, who has been, in some ways, my right-hand man, stepping in, customer service extraordinaire, filling all the gaps to make sure that, we're watertight. And, yeah, I'm just grateful and appreciative of the team, and the extended team, too, with Mikya and Hannes. I really appreciate all of that. Um, and really, I'm quite thankful to be able to do what I do. Now let's get that out of the way, not be too much more soppy. It's just that time of the year where you get a bit reflective, right? Um, and we'll talk a little bit about why the Delta has been such a focus, what the plans are for it. I know I did detail it a little bit last week, but since then, we've reflected about it a little bit. Now, initially, when Kathy approached me and I said, oh, okay, we can do an update to the Delta as a part of an add-on to your Kickstarter. And it was only really meant to be to make the hull more printable. Wasn't supposed to be anything on the interior at all. So I've kind of done a ban and just kept working and working and working on it. And I think a part of the reason why I've pushed the Delta aside for so long is the fact that I knew it wasn't up to the level of detail that I wanted it to be. On the one side, you've got this awesome Star Wars-y type ship, right, that could fit in a number of tabletop games that actually have miniature games, that it could actually see some practical use. So in some ways, this is our most legitimate product line. But I really felt that the quality isn't up to our modern standards. Excuse me. Which is why I think I just got stuck right into it. And this is something I was afraid of the entire time. I've almost entirely done a Scout Ship Beta update too, with like a standalone Hammerhead. And the idea was that we were going to do a free update for existing users. And you know, a couple of days work has turned into a couple of weeks work, and then all of a sudden we're probably closer to 3 weeks by the time you look at all of the stuff that we've done. Not to mention all of the stuff I did before when Kathy was, you know, making her 35mm version. And you know, as we export things, like there's documentation, there's a lot of stuff you don't see. So here's where I'm at. We are going to provide a free update to Delta owners. What that is going to contain is only, and this might not show everything, basically this is what it is, with the upper deck as well, of course. So I can, turn on the right ones. There we go. So we've got the new Delta. The interior changes that will be provided free consist solely of some modified engines. John's trying to convince me to withhold this brand new version that I just made today and sort of put out these versions, which are still a better version, right? So the new hull, just a couple of interior pieces, the new ramp, the ramp cowl, all of the exterior, the new landing gear. I don't think that was here last week. Actually, oh no. Oh, I was worried for a second that that was actually creating an issue, but I just realized I didn't move these back into place. So we can't keep doing these massive free updates that take up 3 or 4 weeks of our year. What we can do is, you know, offer... We're still giving a free update, so that's not entirely true. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to branch out the Delta. So the update from the 2017 model becomes the Delta 1700 series. Kind of has a YT sound to it, doesn't it? And the full version with the complete interior that we'll actually put this one up on Frontiers. will have a heavy discount, like 70 to 80% discount for existing Delta owners. You'll get a code that you can use on the Frontier to upgrade to the 2400 version. At the moment, all the files say 2300. Why is it 20? Look, the numbering system, it's like 1700, 2017, right? 2300 is what it was going to be because we thought we'd be putting it out now. But I talked to Reese over at My Mini Factory. Their next marketing slot is not until the 6th of February. So that's when we're going to launch the Frontier. Basically do a new standalone version, which is the 2400 version with all these modifications. And in the process, we'll probably do a couple of different stretch goals and things where we might revamp things I didn't have time to do, like the old cockpit. It still needs supports. It's not great. There's no interior detail. That would be one, for example. A more customized turret, for example, to this style of ship. But basically we'd be in a position where if you want the full update, throw us a tenner. You get all of this brand new, completely new interior. And, if you do like the free updates, that's also a way that you can further support us, right? So that there is some support to offset this time and those costs. That new engine belongs in a museum. Pulsified Gaming says your modern standards got quite good compared to the S3 standard. Once you went next gen on your walls and tiles were chef's kiss. So yeah, Starship TNG walls have been used in many places here. These are still custom, like the pipes do have some asymmetry to the pattern. There's some asymmetry to the floor plan. And I think if we revisited some of those stretch goals, like the top cockpit, that would change and affect how the rest of the ship actually looks. So maybe it would even have a custom deck plan. But yeah, so the long and short of it is, that's what we're looking to do. And then in March, April, that's when we'll be doing the Nostromo lifeboat campaign. So a standalone smaller ship that can be used as a lifeboat when we do the Nostromo, and that'll be like our September campaign, which comes out just after Alien Romulus if it's on schedule. So hopefully we can sort of piggyback off the popularity of that. Now I have actually gotten a newfound respect for some of the roles of my co-workers working on this thing, because I actually did open up InDesign and started to change the text and details, outlining all of the changes for the Delta. And I'm going to attempt to open InDesign up. It may crash everything because Adobe and Maya don't like to play together. So hopefully, and I'm running OBS as well, so yeah. So this is sort of like my work in progress of the Delta instructions, and I'm opening it because I know there's a list of things that we need to change. So I'm just looking at some of these old graphics. Look, I think there's a way you can display performance, high quality, just get it looking a bit better. And we could do that with the backgrounds. I don't know. Can we do that with the backgrounds? High quality. Does that work? Not really. Oh well. So I've added a bunch more text explaining what the details are. We probably change a few different things about this. The most important thing is the sort of text that we've been focusing on. And the changes here are quite extensive, and this is just for the 1700 version. So we've added new clip variants, which I actually have a whole page dedicated to, explaining where you're going to use all of these different clips. Some of them are John's versions that are just a little bit more printable than mine were. The others are the tighter clips that we just didn't have when we were releasing the Delta. And one of the issues with the Delta is it's quite heavy, and despite the fact that the landing gear is very solid, the actual nose of the ship is quite droopy. So we'll get to that. So yeah, we've added these new clip variants so that you can choose between stability and flexibility. That's kind of standard for 2023 anyway. We've increased the printability of the exterior hull. Almost all of the pieces now can print support free, except for I think the cockpit is the exception. And there are some areas where on the build plates I've put in extra tree supports, organic supports, just to ensure that, you know, some of those areas where there's a steep overhang, particularly, I think it's, yeah, right here with the landing gear, that can be quite steep. Like it prints out like so, like flat like this. And if we look at where the overhang is here, you can see that's quite a heavy angle. It's easy to see here. If you imagine this was rotated 90 degrees, you've only got about a 25-degree angle there. So that's one of the few areas. I've even introduced these sort of like steeper parts. You might notice some other implementations here as well. So let's go through the rest of the list. Should mention the magnetic clip you showed on the Discord and where it could be strategically used. That wasn't me. I think I linked to the fact that printable scenery has a magnet clip version of that. I've never used it. I've never installed it. I wouldn't recommend it for whole pieces. I think you need the actual clip stability there. So, yeah. I've increased the fidelity of the hull in places. So this is just adding, like, here for example, this used to be just a hole. Now it's got some piping. The interior here didn't used to have anything on the walls. We added, especially here, a little bit of detail into some of the cavities. Now this is a real hack job. We've got these, and on the top we have, let's see, these. I also split up the shield into two pieces, just to make it a bit more printable. They'll print nice. They're also printing vertically rather than flat. What else do we have? We revamped the forward cargo bays, including new interior floors. So those were the new interior floors that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. So we have these sort of layers, so you can kind of see through to the underfloor detail. Gives it a bit more of a Millennium Falcon vibe maybe in the cargo area. This is something I really wanted to show off in 3D because you can't really see the effect well otherwise. Also, the 2400 version has a default of a missile launcher. What else did we do? We reinforced the cockpit neck, adding 2 additional clip locations so it should no longer droop. So the original version of the cockpit only had these 2 clips. And so with the weight of this thing, which is actually quite heavy, it had a tendency to just sort of hang down just a little bit, like a couple of degrees, and it was quite noticeable by the time you had the lid on. So now we have 2 clips to a side with the, you know, snug clips installed. That shouldn't be going anywhere. Hey Dalton. What the hell is an aluminum Falcon? Yeah. I've added 6mm metal support rod channels if you want to reinforce the hull. So much like our other large ships, we now are supporting metal rods. And in fact, I think I think, let's see, yeah, we can see them here. So the channels are built around 4 potential rods. They're optional, but it will mean that the front and the back ship is rather horizontally stable. And there are even channels in the top because we've had issues with droopage. It is actually quite heavy, and there's a tendency for the hull to sort of want to go inwards. So that's been offset a little bit. And on top of that, we have our next point. We added a ventral turret port with the airlock hatch as standard. So what I'm talking about here is that this previously was just flat. And this is also a part that's gotten some more fidelity. It has these sort of hole plates now. But yeah, it'll be a standard turret well, and you have like this airlock as the base version. But if you wanted to, for example, install a turret under there, it should fit just fine. And of course, you already could just print another version of this if you wanted to put a turret on the opposite side. Like, they're cross-compatible, essentially. So you just flip them. If you simply just adjust your prints, you can get away without them. Without watts, though. Many parts can be printed at 0% infill. Reducing weight is one of the best free ways to reduce drooping. Yeah. The trick, though, is also knowing which parts. So yeah, we also updated the standard, the side turret model to the standard Mark 23 turret, which we released earlier in the year. This was a part of another free update. So it has a lot more detail. Of course, it is on the side, and there is always that problem. I mean, the Millennium Falcon also had that issue where it's obviously got different gravity in different parts of the ship. It's a bit weird. We added a new rear ramp based on the Odyssey extendable ramp with a new ramp cowl along, allowing the ship to be completely sealed. So this is something that always bothered me. This didn't exist. This is basically your view of the ramp, only the old ramp was also, I think, we did have a version that worked, but here this isn't perfectly interacted, but now the ramp extends out. There is more head clearance than there was before. You could potentially make this ramp steeper as well. It will go another 5 degrees down here, and then you could potentially like have this somewhere like that if you want even more clearance. Again, people dug to get onto the Falcon, using that as the primary sort of hero inspiration. I pointed out before we reworked the landing gear to print without supports. I accomplished this by adding all of these new sort of pneumatics, I guess. So we kind of hid some of those awkward angles and places where you would need to add supports with the pneumatics. I need to test print it still, but I think it'll work. So this prints upside down compared to where it is now. And then finally, we fixed some minor mesh issues. So it was minor, but for example, I noticed that there were several open lock ports that were just slightly recessed inwards. So there was an inconsistency with where the clips were laid out. And that was a real pain in the butt because I figured it out afterwards. And what I'm also missing here to mention so far is we have added 3MF build plates. So we have several different plates here where you can just print out the new updated versions. I also did some changes this morning to prevent some of this shenanigans from happening with printability issues. These items, aside from the chair, will print support free. I've just added a couple of settings in there to kind of help it along its way. So this is the interior parts that are new for the 1700 model. And I'm yet to do the build plates for the 2400 version because we do have until February before we launch. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where if we can get a couple of $1,000 in, it will help offset those costs. If we can get even more and make even more design choices available for the Delta, even better. The aluminum Falcon is a clone of a YT series light freighter made using aluminum rather than steel. Yeah. So that's basically where we're at. I do need to do some new exports because, and this will be more evident, you can actually see I've made some changes to the inner hull here. Mostly with the way that this is all supported. So this is a lot steeper now. Honestly, some of this geometry is completely unnecessary. We could have a ceiling much lower than what it actually is. I think I had a plan for like an engine that comes down and up until this flat plate, but yeah. Again, it's all a question of how much do you compromise. So that was the other thing. I noticed there were some printability issues with the new engines. And again, this might be visible more if I select this and this. You can maybe just make out that there's some intersection here going on. So that's not straight, for example. There are even more collisions down the bottom there. So this wouldn't actually fit in as is. So this part needed to be modified. So now it all fits. That fits in nicely, as does the other piece here. And the new engine versus the old one, I feel looks much cooler. John still thinks, don't give you guys the cool engine to start with. So there are some pipes and things. And I really want to start test printing this, to be honest. I think it's my next printing project. Although I do have some printing issues I need to take care of before I get started. So that's where I'm at with the Delta. And we do need to export some parts, preferably today. What we're waiting on now is for John to add it to 3DO, which is in the process of doing. And then for Lieselot to take the new modified instructions, because one of the reasons why this looks so much like arse compared to, you know, some of our newer instructions is because this is one of the first, I think this might even be the very first one we ever did. And obviously these old assembly instructions, it still assembles pretty much the same way, but there are, look, there's an intersection there, that doesn't work. These will be based on deck design. All of the shaders that we used in this original design, we can't use them anymore. That's part of the reason why. But you can kind of see here the old style layouts. That eating area. It looks like we're running short of memory, so I'm going to actually, in a second, we'll see. Maybe this will load. I just wanted to show the interior. The old interior here, just, we'll have some options to change it just a little bit. You know, it won't be the worst thing in the world. But yeah, the full update, we do kind of need to recuperate some of the time we've put into it. And again, at the end of the year, I don't know exactly how the company's done, but I get a feeling like we're down in the red a little bit again. And this is one of the things we just need to be better about, like trying to run the business a bit more, I don't really want to say for profit, but profit focused, so that we're having healthy margins. And a lot of what we've done this year has been about mitigating those extra costs. And next year, it's going to be a lot more original content to make up for that. Because honestly, the traveler license that we do pay is about the difference between whether or not we're in the red or not. Um, so yeah, there is that to think about. So um, I have delted long enough. Um, well, actually, I'm going to put to you guys what you want to see. So should I... Should I continue exporting the Delta stuff, or should I start working on the slow boat? So get your votes in and we'll determine what we're going to do based on that. Don't really need this render window thing. I'm really proud of the changes we've made to the Delta, and I feel like it looks really cool now. And I'd be quite happy, like, to point people in the direction of this design rather than feeling embarrassed about it. Alrighty. So far, only 5 votes in. We've got 12 people watching at the moment, so hopefully we can get 1 or 2 more. But I feel like it's pretty overwhelming that people want us to work on the slow boat. I'll just give it a second more. And so essentially this is a slow boat. What I'm in the process of doing is just making this so it will be printable. And there's a fast way of doing this, and there's a slow way of doing this. And there's a few quick and dirty ways, some of which we will be employing. It's all about how you cut up the wings. So, alright, we've got 8 votes now, which represents, you know, the majority of the people here. We're pretty firmly in the 9 votes too. We're still at the, like, 2/3 of people want us to work on the slow boat, so we're going to do that. We have had tons of weeks without Traveller, so we're going to stick to that. The docking collar I've not worked on this week, and the reason for it is because, let's see, where is it? Docking collar. Here we go. So this is what I just whipped up for the render. Now, this is potentially a much larger job than it looks like, because here we are basically making open lock terrain in the Traveller style. There needs to be a proper airlock here, and something to sort of bring you down to, you know, an even deck level. So it is a bit complicated. The question becomes, how much is enough? And then really, what is this compatible with? Because you can't really just dump that inside a Beowulf or something like that. We don't actually have tiles based on our Traveller interiors. And it does become a bit of an issue too, because OpenLock deals with walls in a different way. Now, John's new clip system actually does help us have thinner walls technically, but I don't want to mix and match too much. So what I knew is, if I got started on this week knowing that, you know, even at Wednesday I was still very much just doing the finishing touches on the Delta, that I wouldn't have very much to show. And this is still true. It would be even more true if I was just stuck working on this. So at least if I started working on the slow boat, there was going to be a chance that something could be put out this week. Because there are some custom parts, but most of them are actually very close to being printable. Like these cabin parts here, for example. This part, more or less, can be exported as it is, and it will be printable, because it is based on a smaller version of some of the other cabin types. Whereas this requires basically creating a whole new set of modular terrain. to figure out exactly which parts we're going to focus on. Now, I haven't promised a kit based on this stretch goal. It's really just the cradle. And the cradle parts itself is pretty much printable already in these segments. So I might have a couple of different segments with variable widths. So like a 1 inch, a 2 inch one, or a 4 inch one, something like that. The top sections just rest on top, so maybe there's some consideration we need to give to how this would lock into place. Like, do we simply just put one of John's clips in the top and you could just align them that way? I don't think you would ever be in a situation where you want to have the top part across the entire space. I think you might want to have it just as a sort of, like here as it is, a ring, right? So it's representative of what the top level would look like, but you can still see down into the docking port. Tamsin says there's also the issue of the small craft needing to go deeper to bring the cargo bay doors inside. That's a good point. I didn't even consider the fact that there needs to be cargo. Thanks for that, Tamsin. So what seemed like one of the simpler stretch goals becomes something that's complex and possibly is a week-long project. So knowing how behind I was, and I really, really wanted to get the 1700 out for today, but we just couldn't do it with the instructions. And that's probably my fault for getting bogged down. So before we go too much further on this thing, I just want to get rid of some of these panels because they're going to be hidden behind the wings. And the less we have to intersect with things, the better. So we just take these lines and we're just holding down control and hitting delete. It's mucking up our shaders a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that. So let's see. Sure Goal says 2 sets of cargo doors, one for luggage on one side and one larger cargo on the other, and the bigger bay for full modules themselves. I mean, I'm kind of glad that we discussed this in the chat rather than finding out after we do an update that, hey, you didn't even think about cargo. This is modular, so we don't need to think about the locations. I'm just going to head back again. So if we build this modular, you can simply, we just need to do some kind of area for loading cargo. And essentially it's probably going to look like, you know, you keep the rails in, right? Where is the cargo? Kind of hard to see here. The cargo bay door, if I select that, wait, does the little version actually have any? I don't think it does. So not the best demonstration. It doesn't have cargo doors. See, this might have been the issue, me using the 10-ton gig as the example. So yeah, we want to make it repeatable, and we want to make a version so you can get to the cargo door at the position it's at, and we want to make a version so you can get to this opposite side. Now, the thing is though, we are not doing a docking thing for the modular cutter. It's a different diameter. This is what we're doing as the standard thing. So technically, you would dock with the cutter and actually exit out of this airlock. Now, the thing is, it creates too many different iterations. Funnily enough, we never did an actual cutter which is based on the length. Oh, and the other thing too is like the cutter, because of its spine, wouldn't fit anyway. But yeah. So yeah, we were just taking out these panels. I might just change the shaders so it looks uniform. Let's see. I can hear people in the background prepping. We're kind of like in the mood now to do our Christmas thing. So we've got a bunch of wine and beer in the fridge and skumtomta. Let's see. Dalton says some versions should be as escape pod docks for John's 6 D-ton version. No, Dalton, that's out of scope. It's not what we promised. It's not what we're delivering. It's an option for the future. But we're not going to be doing any more work than we promised because it becomes unprofitable for us. No, 5803 asks, on that version, is it internal in the floor? So I don't know if that's referring to the cargo bay there or what the deal is. So we have a couple of considerations we need to make with these wings. One is that the cargo door here has to go through this wall. So if we look at the base wall, there's a slot for this. I'm not sure if John has thickened this up or not too. John, have you thickened that up at all? If you're still around. Shadow Liger says, once we have a base, something for the modular cutter can be kit bashed. Yes, I agree. And look, I'm not saying we're not going to do it. I'm just saying that's ideal stuff that we could stick into a potential Traveler tribes, or however we continue to do Traveler. I'd rather stick to what we promised, not over-deliver, not under-deliver, but just make sure that we do keep the project in the profitability range. Right now, the small craft was profitable. And it's going to be profitable for a couple more months. But like if we go over a certain point, we arrive at the point where it's like... we arrive at a point where we're basically spending more money than we made on it. And it's kind of a bit ambiguous because of the fact that every project we do is essentially financed by our last Kickstarter. So in some ways, what you're paying for is not what we've had to fork out our own money for to build. So like obviously the base small craft and the visualizations for many of the stretch goals were done before we launched the campaign. That's on my dime. Everything up until when we got the Kickstarter money is on my dime. And that dime is based on our sales throughout the year and the proceedings from previous Kickstarters. So then the funds that we do get in pays for A, the royalties, then B, it pays for the stretch goals we produce during that time, and then whatever's left over is our budget for our next project, essentially. So at the moment, in some ways, it's paying for some of the delta modifications. Hopefully that will offset later on as well. But it's always been this way with projects. Shadow Liger says, sorry I'm late, I was accepting a job offer. Congratulations! So no more, you're still going to keep up with the hobby side of things? Do you get to do that on the side? So this is where I've started to break up the wing, and I'm still to kind of figure out exactly where I'm going to stick all of the ports. And we're going to do a bit of a dirty solution here. Something that will not look great in Maya, because there is a slow version of merging all of this stuff, and then there's a faster version. And in practice, when you print, it's not going to make all that much of a difference. Oh, the 0.4mm is this wall. And I have no idea how thick it is now, but I think these extrusions are 0.2, so that would mean that at the moment it's like 2.5, if that's the thickness, because there are gaps between some of the panels. Now, I don't think that's an issue for this particular one. I think it's actually already 4mm, aside from the base here. But it may be worth thickening up those panels a little bit more. So yeah. So yeah, congratulations, Shadow Liger, that's great. So where it's more firmly sort of established is a bit towards the back here. You can kind of see I've already made this white line is where it intersects. And this, to be perfectly honest, it's not a good way of working. It's not a pure way of working on a mesh. It's actually a little bit dodgy. But what it does let us do is easily, if we want to, remove those wings and still use the mesh that's underneath rather than merging them together. So technically it can lead to further variance without it costing too much. Now we probably do need John and I to properly discuss this, because I know he's made some modifications to how we've printed these in the past. Oh yeah, this is the Model 2 with the suit locker. Or was that? Yeah, okay, no, that was present in the... wait, which one's this one? This belongs to which? I'm not seeing which group it's in. That's the ship's boat, right. Okay, so the suit locker thing. Did we already do that, John? The ship's boats have the lockers in them? Yes, they do. What am I saying? Shadow Liger, I do get to keep my hobby LLC. That was the negotiations this morning. Eventually, I will pick up a commercial license for Second Dynasty. Yay! We can probably talk about that directly, because you do so many contributions anyway that, yeah. The Traveller stuff's one thing, but for our stuff, I'm okay with you making a little bit of money on the side. Let's see. Shergirl says, with those wings, the slow boat has a little pinnace envy. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe the pinnace has some slow boat envy. Slow and steady can be the way. These are much, much thicker. Obviously, you can stick a whole bunch of fuel in there. I'd like to see what this looks like with an alternative engine. Like, yeah, I don't know. Again, like, a lot of these designs wouldn't be my choice. But we're trying to stick to, more classic Traveller designs. The Dalton Calvert says, Shadow, let me know once you get the license. I have lots of stuff I want printed. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's true. And, although I'm sure you're getting some stuff printed from John, right? So, sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. I think this is one of the issues for me with Traveller. It's just, I love Traveller as a game. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. When I have run it myself, I've kind of changed the visual representation of the ships anyway. It's not every day you need a deck plan. A lot of Traveller I've accomplished with Theatre of the Mind. It's nice to have miniatures and that on your shelf to say, hey, this is the classic Traveller version. But again, this is not the kind of engine I would stick on. This engine really isn't even representative of what it should look like considering the technology. But, this is kind of going off the resource material that I have to work with. But I've kind of realized, going back to the Delta, which I have full control over, the absolute flexibility I have when working on my own designs. So maybe there's a future where I use the design language of Traveller that I've established based on classic stuff, but I give it the Second Dynasty flair. So maybe the engines would be a lot different, for example. Let's see. Shergirl says, well, Ling Standard Products had a pretty big contract to print billions of these. Yeah. Shadow Liger says, with this new job, I am likely to work on the last 2 3D printing technologies I have yet to touch. Oh, the last 2, 3. Okay, yeah. Cold spray and sheet lamination. I will have touched every 3D printing technology at that point. John says, don't forget it is actually 0.8. I guess you mean you extended it an additional 0.4 millimeters then. So the question becomes, how much do I extend it? And I think, honestly, let's see how it looks with the top. Martin Deering says, is it possible to do a shorter version with those wings? A shorter version of what? Like wings that aren't as long? or wings that don't take up as much of the hull. At present, these wings are kind of static and stuck in the size that they are. They're not modular. Now, to make them modular would be difficult because I think there's only... You could extend them reasonably at this point, but I don't think there's very much of it which is actually on the flat. Like, you have a couple of lines where you can pick it up. The benefit of doing it this way, though, is I'm making the wings so they actually have alternating clips so that the connections should provide pretty strong connections. I am a little concerned, though, because these are quite bulky wings. They may be quite heavy. But also, there's a strong possibility, like John said, that you could print the wings without any infill, making the body shorter. So, if you were happy... Yeah, you can kind of see this green line here in the middle is like where the grid is. You could shorten it up here. And we could potentially do... I think we would need to do a variant basically where we took out the garage door. And then you would just have... You could potentially just shorten this so like you bring back the whole cockpit to like here. As it is, you could take out this 3-meter section. That wouldn't be an issue if you want to shorten it that much. And at the moment, you could lengthen it at this point, but it would require some custom parts. I think we'd, like, for example, you could stick this engine on the back to lengthen it, for example. Because we're actually working, this will be attached to this ring, but there's enough of a tiny little gap we've created so you can slide in there. So this is probably the most feature complete part, and you can see here how it intersects, and again that makes it easy to just remove, so we can potentially remount it on something else. So there's not a huge amount of flexibility. Take out the cargo door, add in windows, passenger variant. Yeah, you could do that. With the version I'm going for, it would... See, there are some issues here where, like, for example, that open lock clip that I got in here. The thing is, you know what, I think I might remove this open lock clip and we'll go with John's clips instead to maintain that modularity, because when we get deeper here, we do have enough room for some open lock clips. You can see them here actually, ready to go. And actually, even further back, they're a bit dark here, but I think, yeah, these are sort of ready to go on this rear wing. You can see where the clips are. So I've made these go in alternating directions for the purpose of adding additional strength. And that should be enough to connect these two wings, I think. We don't want to add too much because it's just going to create even more internal support requirements. We do have some intersections here, but honestly, I think the slicer will take care of it. Now, you could argue that this is a bit lazy, and it is. But I think it won't visually affect the end result, which is why I'm accepting it being in there. So yeah, it is a case of, I think we'll get rid of the open lock clip here and just put in some of John's for this section of the wing, simply for the fact that we then preserve the ability to take, for example, the passenger section from one of the other ships, probably this one, and use that ring instead with this wing. So it would just create a little bit more flexibility. Like, I wonder how that would look. I'm just going to duplicate this real quick, and we should be able to see at least where the windows are. So if we had that there instead, That goes all the way back there, technically. So it'd be more like there. I mean, there will be some intersections here, but I would kind of combine this with, cutting it off here maybe. So your last window ends there. So there are some variants that I'm sure Shadowlike will get into. But yeah, this isn't going to be done today. It's not a huge job. It's probably about half a day more worth of work to get it to a printable state. So hopefully I have some kind of update on Monday. John actually has an update ready for the Kickstarter today, but that's on the physical printing side of things. So, there's a lot of stuff we're trying to cram in. I'm sorry that we've had some delays with the Traveller stuff. Part of it's just been, sort of like not fully 100% coming back to work. Some of it's the fact that, we have fewer resources to work with at the moment because Albin's not on site. And also, John was working overtime while I was in Australia to keep the business running and everything like that. So, he deserved a little bit of time. Oh, John's update already went out. Great. So, yeah, this is kind of where things are at with it. And I can already feel, sort of talking about this, even though it's only been 25 minutes, I can see myself getting back into this now, getting into the flow of things. And it also helps, interacting with you guys and feeling like, okay, well, people wanted me to work on Traveller. All right, maybe I should be focusing on Traveller. That sort of thing. So next week will be focused on this. We're not going to get much more done today because what my brain is going to right now is beer. So yeah, we're maybe a little bit focused on that Christmas party that's coming in a few hours. So I am going to wrap things up a little bit. I think we've got another 3 minutes. So if there are any last questions, I'm happy to answer them. Shadow Liger says, or we give the cheap seats a TV screen, then show them a hellscape, 15% advertisements, or a serene environment, depending on how deep their pockets are. Yeah. I mean, I've got to admit, traveling aboard a plane recently, you're flying business, you're watching a movie and you've got to sit through about 5 minutes of ads at the start. It's like, really? Really? You couldn't subsidize that? Tamsin says, John's update has already gone out, which, yeah, sorry, I already read that. Shurgol actually said it first. And, was it Shurgol that was Fabian on the... No. I've got things mixed up anyway. I feel like I'm just rambling at the moment. I have had some exciting projects this week. Nothing I can talk about at the moment, but stuff that I would like to do. So yeah, we'll see how that goes in the future. It's not a project for the immediate period of time, but it could help us very much with how we show off our work. And TAS Lounge sounds cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, having a bar on board a ship, that kind of thing is cool. You could definitely like recycle some of the parts we used on the Beowulf for that, I'd say. Yeah, I can see the potential. It'd be nice to see what the community can do with these files. And I am still reminded that we really need a good platform for distributing those, all those wonderful variants that, for example, Shadow Liger. I think Shadow Liger's done like 80% of all of the mods anyone's ever done for our stuff. So yeah, I recognize the fact that I am going around in circles. So I'm going to end things here. Thank you guys for joining me. I will have one final stream for the year next week. However, since our Christmas party is coming up, season's greetings to you guys, whatever holidays you might celebrate, or even if you're just enjoying a quiet end of the year. I hope you guys have a wonderful time, and we will be back in the near future, and I'm getting really excited for what we're going to be doing in 2024. Alright guys, thank you very much for being with me. Bye.